Well, good morning, and let's just get right into this. If we look, why today we're learning about protists and fungi. Why do we learn about protists? Protists, where we're starting. Well, there is a plasmid called malaria. I'm sure you've heard of malaria. It is a disease that gets into the blood of people that can kill them, essentially. It is actually a protist. It lives in mosquitoes, and when mosquitoes bite people in certain countries, America, not so much. This is more uh, countries near tropical regions. Um, it is spread through mosquitoes biting people. Here you have a particular story about Alison Brown from Melbourne, Florida. She learned about malaria, what it is, what it does, and decided she was going to turn a school dance into a fundraiser for people to buy mosquito nets in Africa. And the nets will help keep mosquitoes away while people sleep, and this will reduce the uh, number of people infected by this protist. So, we are talking about protists. Protists are eukaryotic cells, so they have nuclei that cannot be put into the domains of plant, animal, or fungi. This is essentially the everything else category. They live mostly in moist surroundings, water. They are extremely diverse. Like I said, these are pretty much, if you're a protist, it means you don't fit into the other categories. Because there's so many in this categories, they tend to divide them into animal-like, plant-like, and fungus-like. And these distinctions you're going to see throughout this little presentation. Um, Animal-like protists are heterotrophs, meaning they move around, and meaning they eat their own food, they eat other organisms, and they move around a lot. Unlike animals, animal-like protists only have one cell. So they're animal-like because they are single-celled, but they move around, they have different methods to do that, and they eat other organisms. So within animal-like protozoans, there are sarcodines, flagellates, ciliates, and parasites. Sarcodines move by forming pseudopods. I love that word because it actually literally means false feet. They bulge up and they move around with that. An amoeba is an example of this. They have something called a contractual vacuole in the middle, a structure that collects and expels water, so it kind of shoots water out of it. Ciliates have structures called cilia, which are tiny hairs that beat and move around. Trying to think if that is in Agario at all, and I don't think it is. So, plant-like protists are like plants. Commonly called algae. They live in water. There's a lot of different ones. They're autotrophic. They use photosynthesis, get their energy from the sun. They can be single cellular or multicellular. They're colorful. Normally they're green, but they can be red or yellow. That's why sometimes when you look at pond water, it's a different color. Algae play a very significant role in environments. They are where most of the sun's energy is captured, and lots of things eat them that then get eaten by other things and other things and other things. So they are kind of the basis of our food chain. They can vary in size. They can be very tiny. They can be very big. Many different colors because they have pigments in them. Euglenoids are normally green, unicellular algae that's found in fresh water. Dinoflagellates, fun word, are unicellular algae that are surrounded by stiff plates that make it look like a suit of armor. Diatoms are unicellular protists that have very glass-like clear cell walls. Almost all red algae are multicellular seaweeds. You'll see them in the picture. Many organisms that are commonly called seaweeds are brown algae. In addition to brown pigment, brown algae also contains green, yellow, and orange colors. Last but not least, we move on to the fungus-like protists. Fungus-like protists are, well, they're kind of like the animal-like protists and the plant-like protists. They are heterotrophs, so they eat other things. They have cell walls, which animals don't have. They use spores to reproduce. All fungus-like protists can move at some point in their life cycle. If you've heard of slime molds, this is an example. They're kind of these oozy, gross things that move across the bottom of forest floors and eat decaying things. They feed on bacteria and other microorganisms. Most water molds and downy mildew live in water or moist places. They kind of look like tiny threads of fuzz that you would see on the damp ground. So that is protists, and we are going to move on to fungi. So, interestingly enough, fungi are an integral part of the environment. Ants will sometimes cut up leaves, leave them in mats, and fungi will grow on them in different places. Interestingly, the ants don't eat the leaves, they actually use the fungi. It's an interesting case of insects using farming techniques. It's very rare. So, what are fungi? Fungi are molds, things that grow on bread. They could be mushrooms, right? How do we tell that they're fungi? Most fungi have several important characteristics that they share throughout. They're eukaryotic, meaning they have a nucleus. They have cell walls, but they're not autotrophic. They're heterotrophic. They need to eat things. They generally absorb their food through the bottom of them, so they break things down. They kind of form a root system that, rather than pull up water, eats nutrients. They need warm, moist places to grow. They generally thrive on damp tree barks, moist food, lawns coated with dew. If you've ever seen mushrooms growing on a front lawn, that's what's happening here. Damp forest floors, and they can even grow on wet bathroom tiles. You should endeavor to not see that. They can either be tiny unicellular yeasts to large multicellular fungi. Except for the simplest fungi, such as unicellular yeasts, most fungi are arranged in structures called hyphae. Hyphae are branching thread-like tubes that make up the bodies of fungi. Most fungi absorb their food through these hyphae. You see, it's under the stalk here. Most fungi reproduce both sexually and asexually, guaranteeing that you'll have more the next generation. So sometimes fungi will produce spores, and they'll call them fruiting bodies. They'll mix their DNA with another fungi nearby and create a new organism. They can also bud. Essentially, one forms a bud off of it, little kind of thing that breaks off, goes away, plants, and becomes a brand new fungi with the same DNA as the original. There are three major groups of fungi: club, the sac, and the zygote. They are classified by the appearance of their reproductive structures. So based on what they use to reproduce is how they classify fungi. Fungi affect the way humans and other organisms live. A lot of them decompose things in nature. If you walk through the woods, down trees, you'll see will have lots of mushrooms on them, helping to break them down. They also grow in piles of dead leaves and try and break them down. Fungi are interesting because they can help or fight disease. They could cause disease as well. Some fungi live in a beneficial relationship with other organisms, like those ants we talked about earlier. Decomposers are organisms that break down chemicals in dead organisms and help return them to a usable state. Without fungi and bacteria, the earth would be buried and just covered with dead plants and animals because they wouldn't break down. Fungi are used in certain foods, certain breads, certain mushrooms, blue cheese. These are all fungi we eat. Some fungi produce substances that help fight bacteria. Penicillin is an example of this. Other fungi are parasites that cause diseases in crops that we would eat, like rice, cotton, soybeans. Well, we don't eat cotton, but we use it. can also affect humans. Humans can get fungal infections like athlete's foot. Some fungi help plants grow larger and healthier when their hyphae grow into it. Lichen is pretty cool. If you ever look on rocks and see that green, brown speckling like you see over in the picture here, that's a fungus. They have an autotroph. They yeah, brain working. It's early. I apologize. A lichen consists of a fungus and either algae or some sort of autotrophic bacteria that live together. So the fungus gives some benefit to the bacteria and the or algae, and the bacteria or algae make food that the fungus can eat. The bacteria and algae get shelter from the fungus. They live in the fungus. It's an interesting, very interesting relationship. You wouldn't think of it. Well, that is our 2 quick lessons on fungi and protists. I will go over the questions, try and write them down so we can see what the answers are if we need that, and we are going to go from there. So